Hello and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. You know, there's an old story about the Soviet-Finnish War. A Soviet army is marching through freezing, snowing Finland when from over a hill a voice calls out and says, "One Finnish soldier is better than 10 Soviet soldiers." So the commander grabs 10 Soviet soldiers, he sends them over the hill. There's some machine guns, some screaming, and then nothing. Then they hear the voice, "One Finnish soldier is better than 100 Soviet soldiers." So the Soviet commander grabs 100 men, he throws them over the hill. You hear some machine guns, some screaming, and then silence. The voice comes back again. The Finnish soldier says, "One Finnish soldier is better than 1,000 Soviet soldiers." So the commander is furious. He gets 1,000 Soviet troops and he sends them over the hill. You hear some machine guns, some screaming, and then nothing. Then finally, one Soviet soldier comes straggling back. He's wounded. He says to his commander, "Don't send any more troops. It's a trap. There's 2 of them." Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Freezing Inferno from Princeps Games.
We'll get back to the review in just a moment. I want to take a minute to ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson PhD, where we talk about history, books on history, military history. I even post some of my lectures for my classes on there. Please check that out. Please subscribe to that channel. And now, back to the review.
In Freezing Inferno, USSR versus Finland, 1939 to 1940, from Princeps Games, 2 players take on the roles of either the Red Army or the Finnish Army as they battle in a desperate struggle for victory. Now, essentially, in the back of the rulebook, there are setup instructions where you can essentially kind of blindly select the Soviet disposition and the Finnish disposition of troops. You can go ahead, you can select that, and then you begin to set up your troops. Now, of course, you have different kinds of units here. You have infantry, you have tanks, you have artillery, anti-aircraft gun, you have fighters, bombers, you have headquarters units. And what you're going to do then is when you put your units on the board, with the exception of anti-aircraft and headquarters units, every unit is actually a stack of 5. Now, this is going to represent your strength level of that particular unit. So you go ahead, you set up where your units are on the board. Now, the objective of the Soviet army is there are 3 victory cities, and they're going to try to take 2 of these victory cities, while in the meantime maintaining at least 5 of their original 7 Soviet cities. The Finnish are just playing for time, trying to keep the Soviets from reaching their objectives, maybe taking some of the Soviet cities as well. Now, the game takes place over 8 rounds, and at the beginning of the game, you're going to set up kind of a stack of cards, event cards. There's different possibilities. Each round has a potential for 3 different events, so you can randomly select them and create 8 an event deck rather of 8 cards, 1 for each round. So at the beginning of each round, you select the event card that you play, and that's going to have kind of specific advantages or disadvantages for one or both players. It may have some other goodies on there, a little spice and sugar for the game. Now, after the events, the Soviet player is going to go first. Essentially, he can go ahead and he can activate all of his units on the board. You can go ahead and you can activate those units by moving them, attacking with them, and regrouping, meaning some of the strengths you can kind of go ahead and move to other units. Now, critically, you don't want to get too far from your headquarters. I believe you want to be within, I think, 7 of your headquarters, all things being equal. If you get beyond that, you're out of supply, your attack and your defense are halved, your movements halved. So you always want to try to stay in supply with your headquarters. Now, as you're moving forward, of course, you're facing different terrain. There are, of course, roads, which are great. Each unit has kind of its movement points printed on it. So each hex you enter is going to cost you certain movement points. I think it's only 2 for roads. Clear spaces are 3. But then if you go into forests, into cities, into mountains, into different regions, of course, it's going to cost more movement points to move into those territories. Now, as you're moving, if you have units that are adjacent to another unit, or if you've got your artillery a little further back within 4 hexes, or you got your air units moving around, you're going to go ahead and engage in combat. Now, how you determine combat is essentially what you're going to do is you're going to look at the unit's attack value, and then you're going to add that to the number of units in that stack. Now, as I say, a full strength unit is going to be 5, 5 deep. So essentially, you take the number of the attack, you add that to the number of counters that you have, and that's going to give you your attack value. Now, the defender is going to do the same thing, but they're going to do it with their defense values. They're going to add their defense value to their counters. Then what you're going to do is look on kind of the factor sheet. What is the factor here? What is the ratio factor? And then the attacker is going to go ahead and roll the die. Now, you actually do have your choice of die. There are some kind of standard 8-sided die. There is an 8-sided die that actually is more than 8 sides, that actually makes it a little harder to roll a 1 or an 8 on that die. But you can go ahead, you can pick however you want to do it. You roll the die, and the die is going to determine, okay, does the attacker take loss? Does the defender take loss? Do they both take loss? Does the defender have to retreat? Is it a catastrophic defeat, for one side or the other? So you can go ahead and figure that out. Now, also, too, if the defender retreats, I believe the attacker can move into that space as well. So that's basically how combat works. You're looking on the combat card. Now, you do have a combat card for essentially ground-to-ground units, and then you also have kind of air-to-ground units. So there's a little bit of difference in those cards and how they work. Now, if the Red Army captures a city, essentially you're going to adjust kind of the military currency track. So however many points that city is worth, whoever lost it's going to go down that many, and then I think the other side can just go up 1 for those. But what that means is that's how much military currency you're going to get at the end of your turn. Once you've gone ahead and you have done all your attacks, you've moved all your guys, you go ahead, you collect your military currency, little cardboard dollar bills, as it were. You go ahead, you collect those, and you're going to wait until a turn when you can spend those on reinforcements. Now, after the Soviet player has gone, then the Finnish player gets to go. They kind of do the same thing. They can move, attack, regroup, and then if they capture cities, they're going to adjust upward on their track as well. And then they will collect military currency. Now, in units 3, 5, 7, and 8, I believe, you can go ahead at the end of your turn, and you can actually spend the military currency in order to purchase new units to kind of bring to strength some other units. You can go ahead and put those on the board. I think all military units have to come out closer to cities. If you want to put out a new headquarters, it comes out, I think, on a city that you control. So you go ahead, you get all of that squared away, you get all your new units on the board, and then you prepare for the next round. So players go back and forth. They're revealing the event cards. They are moving their units around the board. They are trying to stay in supply. They are attacking their enemies. They're trying to take cities. They are trying to defend. They're trying to hold what they've got. They're sending their air forces out. They're bombarding with artillery. And critically, the whole time, the Soviet Union is trying to advance while the Finns are desperately trying to hold on to what they've got. Now, if the Soviets succeed in taking 2 of the 3 Finnish victory cities while still holding on to 5 of their own, then they win the game. However, if the Finns are able to prevent the Soviets from doing that by the end of round 8, then they win. Freezing Inferno, USSR versus Finland, 1939-1940. Now, that is just kind of a bare overview of the game. There's a lot of optional rules that you can actually bring into this too. There's weather. Weather can affect what's going on. You've also got various technology you can spend to invest in technology, make some of your units more powerful, make them better throughout the game. So there's a lot of other options you can do here in this game to customize this game. And what's cool here too is, first of all, you've got that setup. Now, you've also got these mini maps, and you can kind of make notations on the mini maps if you want to do that. But you can create your setups based on the kind of these essentially bot, because there's a solo version, and you kind of see what the bots are doing. You look at those and you say, okay, that's how I'm going to set up my map, and it's kind of a blind setup, so you don't know who's selected what. So it's pretty cool with the setup, and that provides kind of a scenario feel and keeps things from it keeps things from feeling samey. And indeed, it gives you a pretty decent replay value there with just the way you're going to set up units. So this game is really interesting. There's a lot of great decisions throughout this game. How do I want to use my air power? And the Finns have very limited air power, right? Soviets have better. You can, like I say, you can go after another player's air force. You can strafe the ground. You can bomb the ground. Do you want to chance it if there's anti-aircraft there? Do you want to chance it if they can scramble fighters to attack you? So there's a lot of really good choices as far as what to do with your units and what you want to focus on. And it's tough and it's fun. I think I'm in love with the combat system here. It's a pretty cool system where you just count the number you've got in the stack, add that to the attack factor or the defense factor, depending on what you're doing, and then you find out those opposing factors, right? You find out from those strengths, you find out the ratios, the factors, and then you look at the column on what the factors are. And I love games that have combat tables. I love games that have combat tables. And this one's really cool. And you've got the three. You've got ground to air to air, and then ground to ground. And it's really cool. And I really like that quite a bit. So that was fun. But there's also there's also some special abilities. For instance, the Finns can actually capture, if they destroy Soviet tanks, they can actually capture Soviet tanks. The Soviets can actually remove the treads from their tanks, and they can go a lot, get 20 movement points on roads. They do sacrifice their combat strength when they do that, and defense strength when they do that, but they can move really quickly. And so it's very kind of historically accurate and kind of interesting asymmetrical powers there, which I really liked. So that was really cool. Now I do have some criticisms. The rule book here is not as good as I would have liked. Some of the problems with the rule book are there's some little questions that don't quite work at times. We had questions about artillery and how they worked on the tables, because obviously artillery is not subject to a counterattack, right? So I wish there was a little clarification on that. There's a few other little things here and there that the rule book was not terribly helpful on. So not a great rule book. It's not the worst rule book I've ever seen, but still there were little things here and there that stopped the game. We're looking at it when we kind of have to house rule something. So some of that did happen during this game. But I have to tell you, on the whole, we both had a lot of fun with this. We didn't play with the optional stuff. We just played the game straight, and it was a lot of fun. This is a great kind of operational scenario. How best to employ your units? Where do you place them? How best do you utilize the terrain? How easy is it to get on roads? This is really just frankly blew me away. I was expecting good things from this company. I was expecting good things from this game, but the game was just awesome. And then on top of that too, so the game I received, of course, you've got little cool boxes that hold everything. You've got a Soviet box and a Finnish box, but then you've got some other boxes to hold some of the stuff. You've got some really good kind of strong cardboard tiles, player aids, and the combat tables and stuff were pretty good. I think it's just a great package and beautiful artwork as well. There's two sides to the board. One's kind of a more detailed side. One's less detailed. But they're both beautiful. And the game, the package as a whole, it's a great production. I like the options too with dice. We were playing with the dice that made the 1 and the 8 less likely. We really liked it. We just had fun with this. So many good options. This is such a good war game. With the exception, like I say, of some of the issues with the rule book, I'm in love with this game. I think it's fantastic. I'd like to see a FAQ come out and some errata, some clarifications. But barring that, this game is superb. Recommendation for the discriminating gamer for Freezing Inferno is buy it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We'd ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. I'd also ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to please check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson PhD, where we talk about history, military history, books on history. I post some of my lectures on there. Please check that out. Please subscribe. And I would also ask you to please give a thumb to this video on Board Game Geek as well. That helps us out a lot. If you're a fan of the channel, we'd ask you to go ahead and click on the Super Thanks button here on the YouTube page and leave a contribution. That would mean a lot to us as well. Finnish sources recently reported that there are 80,000 Russian soldiers on its border. Fortunately, they've all been 6 feet under for 80 years. Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground.
ships are crossing the neutral zone, and we should stop it.
Oh, gosh, we just crossed the neutral zone.
Yeah.
I just committed an act of violated international law, interstellar law. You guys are all culpable with me if I'm going down.